What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 310 of #AskGSM here today for Wednesday, November 6th, 2019. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. If you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on the page on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So without further ado, let's get started here with today's questions, starting with the YouTube questions. First from Chrome Heart from YouTube. They sent this in last week. Their question was, do you think NXT will ever invade AEW or vice versa? Like the iconic moment with DX and WCW, and who do you think would lead which brand if it were to happen? In my opinion, for NXT, it would be Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, Matt Riddle, and maybe Rhea Ripley, being the China, which is actually a good point. And for AEW, Cody, Dustin Rhodes, Jon Moxley, and Britt Baker, because Adam Cole, baby, LOL. No, I don't think we'll ever get anything remotely like that again. The closest I think we will ever come to a DX-like invasion that we got 20 years ago would probably be the Elite invasion, actually, that we got on Being the Elite I think it was 2 years ago. Maybe not a year ago. I feel like it was in late 2017. It was when Jimmy Jacobs got fired because he was shown being photographed with the Elite, with the Bullet Club. I think Cody was there. I don't think Kenny was there. I know Marty was there, Brandy Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Adam Page. I mean, it was a funny skit. They weren't actually going to go into the arena for Raw that night, but it was a really funny, well-done skit. That's probably the closest we will ever come to any sort of invasion, and that wasn't even on a show. That was on the Young Bucks YouTube channel, which was hilariously well done. WWE, I doubt, would ever do anything like that again. AEW, I think, should refrain from doing stuff like that. Not to make exceptions for certain companies, but it just makes them look Bush League if they were to take shots at WWE like Cody has since, May, since Double or Nothing with the whole throne thing, which I still find stupid, but whatever. I think both companies should just focus on putting forth the best product that they can, and so far, they're doing a great job of that. I gotta commend both AEW and NXT for doing such an exceptional job of just not tearing down the competition, but trying to put on the better show over whatever's airing simultaneously on Wednesday nights. I think that's the best approach to take, regardless of what the ratings say. I think that's the only and the best thing they can possibly do is to just build up their own show. So no, I don't really want to see an invasion, as funny as that would be. I'll leave it to the Bullet Club one from a few years ago to do what that could be on their YouTube show from a few years ago. Again, that's probably the closest we will ever come to seeing something like that again. But also, again, that original angle was so well done because it was innovative. We had never seen anything like that before. To just copy it, it was very obvious that the Bullet Club were making a parody of that DX invasion by invading, quote-unquote, Raw 2 years ago. If AEW were to do it, it's old hat. Same thing with NXT. We've seen it so many times before, and I know Triple H is in charge of NXT, so it would kind of make sense, I guess. But at the same time, though, we've seen it before, and it just feels redundant. It feels like taking something that worked and doing it again because you don't have any fresh ideas. So, yeah, it was funny 20 years ago. I wouldn't prefer to see it again in 2019, but that's just me. In a perfect world, who would lead each team? Probably everyone you just said. Maybe not Dustin Rhodes. I don't know if I would go with Dustin Rhodes. Britt Baker, like you said, for Adam Cole would be perfect. Baker, Cody, you got to go the Young Bucks. Adam Page, probably Kenny too, considering his comments towards NXT and Seth Rollins and people like that in recent months. For NXT, you probably hit the nail right on the head with Gargano, Ciampa, Riddle. Ripley would make sense again as the China, but Baszler I think is a better fit just because she's been the face of that women's division longer. So either one, it doesn't really matter, but I think Baszler would make more sense just because she has been with NXT longer, a little more than Rhea Ripley, I believe. But if not, Rhea Ripley only really returned to NXT a few months ago. So in a perfect world, if this angle was to happen, then yeah, I would put Baszler in there, but Ripley's not a bad choice either. Either way, this is something the point is moot. It's a moot point because I don't ever really see it happening regardless. But it is fun to entertain the idea nonetheless. Next question comes from The Average Grunt from YouTube. Welcome back, my friend. I know he hasn't sent in a question in a while. I know he was taking some time off from Twitter, but glad to see him back. The Average Grunt, I've been following him. We've been following each other now for, 6, 7 years almost? So great to see you back, my friend. Hope you're doing well. But his question was, can you rank these Ken Shamrock dream matches from worst to best? Ken Shamrock versus Brock Lesnar, Shamrock versus Samoa Joe, Shamrock versus CM Punk, Shamrock versus Bryan Danielson, Shamrock versus Kurt Angle, and Shamrock versus Taz. Note that everyone listed would be in their prime for these matches. Until you threw in that last line there, I didn't know if you were talking about current Ken Shamrock or Ken Shamrock circa 1998. Because Ken Shamrock, believe it or not, can still go in 2019 as seen in his recent Impact matches, so good for him. But these are no matches that I would really like to see in 2019, so I'm glad you threw in that last line there about Shamrock and everyone else being in their prime for these matches. But anyway, from worst to best, I mean, they're all great matches on paper. This is all personal preference to me. But from weakest to strongest, in terms of appeal, in my opinion, in terms of dream match, CM Punk would be at the bottom. I think Punk and Shamrock could have a good match. Maybe more so on the mic, but, that doesn't really scream dream match to me. Punk is, one of the best wrestlers they've had in the last 20 years, but, that doesn't really feel like a dream match. Taz would be next. I like Taz. The guy was great back in the 90s, early 2000s. Never really the biggest Taz fan, I'm going to be honest with you. Maybe on commentary, not so much in the ring as a character. Never really did a lot for me. I could see the appeal. I could see the appeal there. Suplex versus submission style wrestling, and kind of vice versa. They have a similar style of wrestling. I don't really see that as a dream match. Taz came in after Shamrock left the company, like right after in 2000. I don't think Shamrock was there in 2000, and if he was definitely on his way out. But anyway, that would be next. Then Bryan Danielson, which I'm sure would be an amazing match. If you made a point to say Bryan Danielson and not Daniel Bryan, so you're talking like Bryan Danielson circa Ring of Honor. And in that case, that would be a great match. I put Samoa Joe after that because I think Joe and Shamrock would have a really interesting dynamic. I don't know how well Shamrock would work with a smaller opponent. And Shamrock is a big, ripped dude. And I'm sure Danielson could get a great match out of him. But size dynamic-wise, it doesn't really scream intriguing to me as much as Joe versus Shamrock does. I feel like Shamrock would really thrive against a bigger opponent, more dominant opponent, kind of working from underneath. And again, throwing in that submission style of wrestling, I think that'd be an amazing match. So Samoa Joe. Then second on my list, we're working our way from the bottom up to the top here, of course. Brock Lesnar. But again, we're talking, you said prime, so probably in the mid-2000s. Brock Lesnar circa 2002, 2003, I guess would make sense in this case. I would like to see Brock Lesnar from 2012 when he first came back to the company after a stint in the UFC. I want to see that Brock Lesnar from Ken Shamrock versus Ken Shamrock from 1998. With the similar UFC backgrounds, I think that'd be a very interesting matchup. And again, I said before, with Shamrock and Joe, I think Shamrock would really thrive in working with larger opponents, using his vast variety of submissions and style of wrestling and stuff like that to his advantage against a bigger opponent. So, I think Shamrock and Lesnar would be a lot of fun. Number one, though, my biggest dream match, if you can even really call it that, of these bunch that you mentioned, would be Shamrock versus Kurt Angle. Now, I'm shocked that we never got that match back in the 90s. Then again, though, if Shamrock was still with the company by late 90s, early 2000s, then I'm not really sure. Again, I thought Shamrock was with them in 2000. I guess let's look right now. Let's see, when did he leave WWE? Ken Shamrock. Because Kurt Angle debuted in November of 1999. So if Shamrock was around, at that point, maybe they could have done the match in passing before he left the company in 2000. Let's see, he left in 1999? Let's see here. He went on to feud with the newly debuted Chris Jericho until departing the WWF in late 1999. Okay, so he left in 99 right before Kurt Angle debuted at Survivor Series, which is pretty surprising. I thought he would have been around in 2000 because I know they were doing that feud with Ryan Shamrock, but maybe that was 99 with Road Dogg and Gold Dust, I think maybe. I don't know. Maybe that was 99. I thought it was 2000. Maybe it was even 98. I have no idea. It was probably 99. Could have sworn it was 2000. But anyway, Yeah, so I think Angle and Shamrock would have been an amazing match with both guys in their prime. It's a shame the match never really got to happen. Shamrock went to TNA soon after his WWE stint in like 2002, but he was long gone by the time that Kurt Angle debuted in 2006. So the match, as far as I know, never came to fruition unless it was in another promotion somewhere that I'm not aware of. I don't think we ever got Kurt Angle versus Ken Shamrock, and I think that match would have been absolutely incredible. Elena the Y from YouTube, they got a couple questions here. First one being, SmackDown was great, but after Raw's example, I can't say I'm terribly excited for NXT versus the main roster. It's just hard to get in that brand supremacy shtick when almost everybody's personality gets simplified to fighting anyone with a different colored shirt because I got to assert dominance from my boss. Speaking of which, how come Triple H gets to be the leader of NXT over General Manager William Regal? I would have at least liked to see Regal delivering fiery speeches against Raw and SmackDown. You know what? Being the big Regal fan that I am, I absolutely 120% fucking agree with you. 100%. Seeing Regal back on WWE TV in a role like that, similar to what he was doing as Raw GM, which is when I started watching in 2008, that's what got me hooked on wrestling. If it wasn't for William Regal, I probably would have never become a professional wrestling fan. Because they watched it a little bit before Regal became the GM and I started watching for him. I watched 1 or 2 episodes in late 2007, never really got into it until Regal really hooked me in like the spring of 2008. So for that reason alone, I 120% agree. Regal in that spot would have been awesome. I think the only reason they went with Triple H instead was because he's a bigger name. People know that NXT is Triple H's baby. And yeah, I mean, they're not really doing any authority figures for Raw and for SmackDown. Triple H is just kind of invading against Seth Rollins and Daniel Bryan. It's not like Triple H versus Shane and Stephanie, who were running at one point where the commissioners of Raw and SmackDown. I'm not really sure if they still are in storyline. I would assume so, but then again, Shane got fired about a month ago on SmackDown's Fox debut show, so I'm not really sure who's running what show, if anyone at all. So that's why they did it. But yeah, Triple H is the bigger name. People will pop to see him. Probably Regal too. And he has been the GM now for over 5 years. Probably easily the longest running general manager consecutively in WWE history. He has to be. Teddy Long was GM for a while, but not consecutively. He was GM, I think, from 04 to 07, then relinquished his duties for a while in late 07, 2008, came back, I want to say in 2009, after being the GM of ECW for a while, and then I think he was GM from 09 to maybe 2012, 2013, and that's still 4 years, but Regal's been GM now for 5 years of NXT since the summer of 2014. But yeah, I agree. I didn't really think about that, but it would have been cool to see Regal back on TV, but again, people know that NXT is Triple H's baby, so that's why they did it. And it works, because we got to see interactions with Daniel Bryan and Triple H, and Seth Rollins and Triple H, 2 guys that have a lot of history with Triple H at WrestleMania in recent years. So, it makes sense. But yeah, it would have been cool to see Regal involved in the process as well. Elena's second question here. Going back to earlier, Shayna Baszler confronting Becky Lynch was by far the most interesting of the Raw versus NXT segments because it actually references character history. Baszler and Lynch's respective relationship with Ronda Rousey to make a point. There's way more substance there than Raw versus SmackDown or Raw and SmackDown people just fighting NXT people for vague supremacy, especially when you consider nearly everyone in WWE came from NXT, and in cases like the Revival, had better years in NXT. Honestly, has this brand supremacy, ever truly been impactful to begin with? How many times has SmackDown had to argue that they're not the B show? Yeah, I'm not a fan of the brand supremacy shit. I completely agree. I hope NXT will find a way tonight to make sense of it all because, yeah, I agree. As much as I love NXT, it still is silly to see, despite the subtle little touches of Ciampa, eyeing down Goldie on last week's SmackDown at the end of the show, despite the fact that he was essentially working together with Adam Cole and Undisputed Era against the rest of the SmackDown roster, which made no sense. Same thing with Matt Riddle and Keith Lee, who were attacked by Undisputed Era 2 days earlier on NXT. It made no sense for them to work together for a common cause and then go back to feuding the very next week. Like, Jesus Christ, all these people are bound to be feuding with each other the night before Survivor Series. So how stupid would it be? And I mean, I'm not sure if the main roster will even acknowledge the feuds going on right now in NXT. I'm not really sure. I don't think so. But how dumb would it be to do that awesome men's War Games match? Or even, I mean, they're not, I don't know. We'll see. But the women's War Games is definite. The men's War Games as well. But how dumb would it be to do those two matches and then to have those two teams team up for a respective, Raw, SmackDown, NXT triple threat elimination tag team match on Sunday, the very next day. For example, how dumb would it be to have Team Ciampa versus Team Cole on Saturday? And then on Sunday, in like a Team NXT match, it's Ciampa and Cole teaming up, along with like Keith Lee, Matt Riddle, and other members of Undisputed Era. That would be stupid. It would make absolutely no sense. So, I can absolutely see what you're saying. It doesn't bother me too much just because this is the best brand supremacy storyline they've done on the main roster in many years, just because of the fresh feel that NXT brings. The Raw versus SmackDown nonsense, it means nothing. I'm not a fan of it. I've been saying it for years now. I hate the brand supremacy shit. It means nothing. We just had the wild card rule. So who gives a fuck? When we see Raw superstars on SmackDown and SmackDown superstars on Raw, who cares? It doesn't mean anything. So I'm glad NXT is getting involved, that they are going to do it. At least make it intriguing. At least make it interesting. At least make it compelling. But I gotta agree, how many years can you continue to do this? As a one-time thing, it works. But if they keep doing it next year, it's going to become predictable and watered down and just the same shit every year. A lot like Hell in a Cell is every October. We're going to get the same brand supremacy shit every year, every November going forward as we have since 2016. I'm not a fan of it. They made the most of it this time around, and I agree. The Becky and Shayna stuff I thought was great because they do not have history, but they both have history and relationships with Ronda Rousey. And if Becky one day beats, if Baszler rather one day beats Becky, then she can claim that she did what Ronda Rousey couldn't in beating Becky Lynch for that Raw Women's Championship. So we'll see where it goes. That's the one match that intrigues me the most out of all of them. And the tag team title match is especially comical because it's going to be a great match regardless. But how stupid is it that we're getting, from a storyline standpoint here, think about this. The Revival, I almost said the War Raiders, the Viking Raiders, and Undisputed Era in a triple threat tag team match at the pay-per-view. Sounds like an amazing match on paper, but what the fuck? The Revival, like you said, had better years in NXT. As for the War Raiders, they were just there 6 months ago. They were just in NXT earlier this year as the NXT Tag Team Champions, no less. So I'm not really sure. I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, maybe the New Day will win the SmackDown Tag Team titles back on Friday, and I hope they don't. We've seen it a million times. I have no interest in seeing that. And I don't think they will anyway. I guess there's a good chance because they don't really give a shit about the Revival, but the match would be better the way it is right now with the Revival, with Viking Raiders, and with Undisputed Era. But it makes no sense because the Viking Raiders were just in NXT. I'm glad the Street Profits aren't taking a side because how ridiculous would it be for them to side with the main roster, for them to side with Raw after literally just getting called up from the Black and Gold brand 2 months ago. It'd be incredibly stupid. So again, I'm not a big fan of it. They're making the most of it. It is making Raw and SmackDown better, but it's really just putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound because at this point, Raw and SmackDown, they need to be doing better. Yeah, that was the best SmackDown they've done all year by far, but when the NXT angle comes and goes, what are we left with on these shows? SmackDown was not lighting the world on fire on Fox before NXT came along and gave it its best rating in the last couple of weeks. So I would really hope that they have something planned for after this Survivor Series shit runs its course. Because after it's done, what are we left with on Raw and SmackDown? People will go back to doing the same old thing, and the Raw versus SmackDown mentality will go back to meaning nothing. Because we see them fight on every pay-per-view anyway, so what the fuck does it even mean? Next question, also from Elena the Y. From a historical standpoint, Seth Rollins versus Adam Cole should have been more memorable than Daniel Bryan versus Adam Cole. Bryan was a total jobber in game show era NXT, while Rollins was the brand's first ever champion. So why was Rollins versus Cole only half as long with half as much energy as Bryan versus Cole? Because it happened on SmackDown. That's why, because it happened on SmackDown. If Rollins and Cole, I guarantee you, if Rollins was a SmackDown superstar and they had him on SmackDown last week, facing Adam Cole for the NXT Championship, I guarantee you it would have been the same match that Bryan and Cole had on Friday. Because I know Vince was there, that it wasn't, a Vince-produced show. It was a Vince-produced show. But SmackDown, it seems like they're willing to take more risks than they are on Raw. And maybe they didn't want their golden boy taking the pinfall loss, Rollins, that is. And I get it. He's coming off a loss to The Fiend at the Crown Jewel pay-per-view. So they probably didn't want to have him beating Seth Rollins clean the same way that he beat Daniel Bryan. And everyone beats Daniel Bryan clean. It was still a major moment. But, fucking Ali pinned him earlier this year. Kofi's beaten Daniel Bryan before. Even fucking Buddy Murphy, who went on to do nothing after he beat Daniel Bryan, beat Bryan clean only a few short months ago. So it's not really as big of a deal as if Adam Cole beat Seth Rollins clean. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Cole and Rollins should have meant more than Bryan and Cole did, just because there is more history there from NXT. They've never once crossed paths, of course, but Rollins being the first ever NXT champion, it should have meant more for him. It should have meant more for him to be facing the current champion, the Daniel Bryan, who, as you said, was still in the game show era of NXT and never the NXT in the form that we currently see it in. Then again, though, Bryan was in the main event of that first ever NXT show. It may not have been what it is today, but Bryan did face Chris Jericho on that first ever episode and the first ever main event of that first episode of NXT almost 10 years ago. So there is something to be said for that as well. And there are last two questions here. Their first one being, SCU are fine and all, but putting them over Lucha Bros in the AEW Tag Team Championship Finals felt like a giant misstep. Maybe it's wanting to honor the lifetime achievements of some of Southern California's most influential veterans. Maybe it's Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix being in too many companies to rely on them as the faces of your own tag team division. But how do you not pull the trigger on the cool, menacing skeleton and his impossibly athletic brother? And it doesn't help that Kazarian seemed to have an off night while Phoenix was absolutely on. When isn't Phoenix on? Phoenix is always on. The guy's amazing. I don't think I've ever seen Phoenix have an off night. Every match I've seen him in so far in AEW and even in Lucha and Impact, I've never seen the guy have a bad match. He's just that good, and Pentagon's great too. Pentagon's the better performer in terms of character, development, and crowd interaction and stuff like that, but Phoenix is the better wrestler, I would argue. Together, they're the perfect combo. They're a tremendous tag team. They are so good. But I completely agree. The match was good. The finish felt flat for me. The roll-up, the dreaded fucking roll-up. I feel like we see this in AEW every week. Why do we need to see roll-ups all the time? It doesn't protect anyone when it happens constantly. I hate the fucking roll-up finish. It does nothing to help anybody. Once in a while, it could work. But when you do it to close out your AEW World Tag Team Championship Finals, the tournament, whatever, after hitting everything in your arsenal, Pentagon fucking almost broke Kazarian's neck at one point with one of his moves. Not literally, but it looked like he did. All their offense is so hard-hitting. They hit all their finishers, and then it's a roll-up that wins in the match. That was kind of uneventful. Maybe they had to rush the finish because they were going off the air quickly. They didn't have much time. I get it. It kind of felt a little underwhelming. The match was good again, but the Lucha Bros are not only the best tag team in AEW, over the Young Bucks, yes, I completely agree. Not only the best tag team in AEW, the best tag team in the world. Now again, that's not to say they won't get their shot at some other point, maybe as soon as next month. Maybe they beat SCU in a rematch of the belts at Full Gear, which at what point, I don't know what the point of that would be, if they weren't just going to put the belts on them to begin with, but nonetheless, I like SCU. I agree. I like SCU. They're a lot of fun to watch. Their matches are entertaining. They're more over now than ever before in their entire careers, individually and, collectively. And that includes Christopher Daniels. But anyway, I just don't agree with putting the belts on them first. And they're a good, first tag team to have. Maybe this is their last shot at becoming tag team champions because maybe by next year they won't be as over anymore and they would have missed their opportunity to win the tag team titles. But in that case, so be it. They're a great tag team, but Lucha Bros are 10 times better. And I don't think they should have been beaten here. After beating the Young Bucks in that awesome ladder match at All Out, they really should have been the first ever World Tag Team Champions. Again, I'm not going to get too disappointed over it. I'm not going to get too, frustrated or upset or whatever, because they will win the championships eventually. But I'm just not a big fan of them losing in the finals of the tournament. They are the best tag team in AEW. So again, SCU are good, but I could see maybe the crowd turning on them because they aren't the Lucha Bros. I could absolutely see that being a possibility, but I agree. I don't know why they did it. Maybe as it is, like you said, it is part of the whole rewarding, SCU's efforts as one of the longer reigning tag teams in a while. SCU's only really been a thing for 2 years now, but Kazarian and Daniels were a tag team for years and years and years, dating back to their Impact days, like 10 years ago. So I can get why they would want the championships on them, but to me it feels like fucking nepotism. And maybe I'm just stretching here, but SCU are the Elite Boys. SCU was like the first tag team that got signed to AEW back in January. Yeah, the Lucha Bros were signed soon after, but the Lucha Bros are not, they're not as close, I don't think, with the Bucks as SCU are, who have been on being the Elite now for over a year and a half, 2 years almost. So I don't know. Maybe it's part of that. I'm not really sure. Maybe that's part of it. Either way, though, they could have had worse tag team champions, their first ever world tag team champions. They could have put the belts in the fucking Dark Order or someone like that. So it could have been 10 times worse. I'll say that right out of the gate. But the Lucha Bros, in my mind, absolutely should have won that match. And their last question here. How come Rick and Morty didn't interact with Ricky Morton? Yeah, it felt like a missed opportunity to me. Being the Rick and Morty fan that I am, and I gotta mention this, someone last week called me, in so many words, a fake fan of Rick and Morty because of what I said on Wrestle Rant Radio about how I love the segment they did on AEW last week with the Rick and Morty cosplay with Best Friends and Orange Cassidy, and I didn't know what channel the show had aired on. I said, isn't it Adult Swim or something like that? I honestly don't know. And this person was like, how can you claim to be such a fan of Rick and Morty and not know where it airs? Listen up, you dumbass. I don't watch the show live. I don't have time to watch the show live. I watch it on Xfinity, and I watch it online. I watch it on the website. I don't give a shit about what channel it airs on. That doesn't discount the fact that, you're a bigger fan because you know what channel it airs on. Well, no fucking shit. Most people don't know what channel FS1 is on. Does that mean they're not a fan of SmackDown or of WWE Backstage because they never really go to the channel? No, because they probably watch it online or after the fact or whatever, like I do. So get the fuck out of here with that nonsense. But as you were saying, though, with Rick and Morty and Ricky Morton, I think Excalibur made a note of that on commentary, I believe, during the show last week. And it was like, Jim Ross was like, he didn't really get it because he has no idea what the fuck Rick and Morty is, probably. He's probably like, what the hell is this shit? But yeah, it felt like a missed opportunity to me. Maybe they could have done it earlier on in the evening, backstage real quickly. It's not life or death, but that would have been funny had they had the Rick and Morty characters interact with Ricky Morton before they went out there and got their asses kicked by Santana and Ortiz on the stage. At Iwagu91, your thoughts on the first ever Women's War Games match announced and the possibility of 2 War Games matches at the same TakeOver event. Women's War Games, I fucking love it. I absolutely love it. It should be a great match. And the cool thing about these War Games matches, as other people have mentioned, and myself as well, I love the fact that we've had now 3 War Games events. 2017, last year, and then this year. And every War Games they've done or will do make sense. They've all made sense. They don't feel forced. It's not like Hell in the Cell where, it's October, time to do a Hell in the Cell match. No, every War Games match they are currently setting up and have done in the past were all necessary in telling the stories that they were at that time. So I love the fact, I absolutely love the fact that we're getting another War Games, or Women's War Games at TakeOver this year. I'm not too high on the idea of 2 War Games matches in the same show. I feel like it kind of makes it lose its luster a little bit. I would really, if you want to do 2 Elimination Chamber matches on the same show, whatever. 2 Hell in a Cell matches, they've been doing that in recent years anyway, but if you want to do 2 on the same show, okay, fine. 2 War Games matches, I'm not as big of a fan of that. I'm sure they will do it justice. I'm sure both matches will be great. The Women's War Games, if I had to choose, I'd rather see that over the Men's War Games because we've seen Men War Games and we've seen the Undisputed Era in War Games twice before, actually. And you could very well create a card without another War Games match. You could do Cole and Ciampa. You could do Balor Gargano. You could do Fish and O'Reilly versus Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic or some shit for the tag titles. And then Roderick Strong versus either Matt Riddle or Velveteen Dream. So I feel like you don't need another War Games, but it's not bad. I'm sure the match will be great. Undisputed Era has delivered inside the cage for or cages really, to be specific, to be exact. They've delivered inside the cages for the past 2 years. I'm sure this year will be no exception. But again, I feel like it kind of oversaturates the concept a little bit. But again, knowing NXT, they will absolutely do it justice, and I'm looking forward to the show. It looks like an absolutely stacked show on paper. When you throw in those matches, the likely prospect of a Cruiserweight Championship match between Lio Rush and Angel Garza, and then Johnny Gargano versus Finn Balor, that has maybe not show of the year, but one of the best events that WWE has put on in quite some time, written all over it. Their next question here, not to say that I want her to leave Impact Wrestling as she is content, successful, and booked as their top female talent there. If Tessa Blanchard were to sign, though, with AEW, would she be their top female star? Likewise, if she would become one of the top female stars in the WWE as well. So, you said one of their top female talent in Impact. She's not only one of their top female talent in Impact. Tessa is one of their top talent, period. I feel like as great of a roster as Impact has, and they have a really good roster, Tessa is the biggest star they have in that promotion. Now again, as I've heard this before, she's a big fish in a small pond, which is absolutely accurate. I still do feel like she would be successful elsewhere. 100%. How can you bring her to WWE and not at some point do a Tessa Blanchard versus Charlotte Flair feud? That fucking writes itself. It writes itself. So, would she be successful first in AEW? 100%. Would she be their top female star? I would hope so. Who else in that division comes close to being as good as Tessa Blanchard? Who in that division is anywhere near as well-rounded of a performer as Tessa Blanchard is? The answer is nobody. Rio is very good as a character. She bores me to fucking tears because I know nothing about the girl whatsoever. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So, she's better than her. Far better than Britt Baker, who's good. Not the crown jewel of that division. Especially in the ring, she's not. She's really not that good. She's far better than Britt Baker. I honestly am at a loss for who else is on that roster. They have Awesome Kong, who is well past their prime. Leva Bates sucks. Allie is good. Sadie Gibbs is very good. They just aren't the woman to build around in that division. They need to sign Mercedes Martinez, I would hope, at some point. Big Swole was on AEW Dark last night and did well. But Tessa, they need Tessa. I mean, her dad's there anyway. Tully Blanchard is currently managing Sean Spears, so how could she not go there when her contract expires? Now, I'm sure she would love to go to WWE. I don't think the timing was right after the first Mae Young Classic. I'm not sure if they didn't offer her a deal or if she just turned it down. I don't know what the deal there was. I talked about it with her briefly when I interviewed her for Wrestle Rant Radio actually about a year ago. And she talked about the prospect of maybe one day going to WWE, but obviously she's not focused on that right now because she's enjoying what she's doing in Impact. And she's been treated like a star since day one in Impact. So, yeah, obviously I think if she were to go to WWE, I think she would be a top female star. Maybe not as much as she is currently in Impact and AEW even, just because WWE's women's division, especially NXT, is top-notch. They have so many stars, it's going to be hard for her to rise above the rest. I don't know if she would be the star in WWE as she would be in AEW or Impact, but I feel like they would be remiss not to push her as one of the top stars. They got to know her family legacy. They got to know how good she is, her mic skills, her presence as a superstar. She checks off every box that they would want in a WWE women's wrestler. Just a wrestler, period. She's great. I wouldn't do the intergender stuff with her in WWE, but in Impact, it's believable. It's to a certain extent. When she faces Sami Callihan, I get it. When she faces fucking the big tree-looking guy from NXT, not Alexander Wolf, Sawyer Fulton, Madman Fulton currently in Impact, that is where I kind of cross the line a little bit. That's where I draw the line, not cross the line. That's the old Impact what was it? Their old slogan from like 2008. That was their old tagline, "Time to cross the line," which was a great theme song, by the way. But anyway, yeah, I absolutely think she would do well in any company she decides to sign with, which I would hope would not be Ring of Honor, which would be an absolutely dumb move, but I doubt she would go there anyway. Her and Charlotte writes itself. Her and Bayley would be fun. Her and Becky would be great. Her and Sasha could be a lot of fun. Ember Moon at some point. They may have history, I'm not sure, outside of WWE. Anyone in NXT, her and Candice, her and Shayna, you name it, she would be better than all of them. But yeah, Tessa is bound to be successful wherever she ends up. And I think her current contract expires in the summer of next year. It's going to be a really interesting time because they're currently pushing her, it seems, towards the top title, towards the World Championship. And maybe that's their way of trying to convince her to stay when her contract expires next year, and that's not for another 6 or 7 months. But I don't know. I think it's going to be a big loss for Impact when they eventually lose her. It's really just a matter of when and not if. It may not be in the summer, may not be as soon as this summer. She may re-sign for another year or 2 years or 3 years. Who knows? I wouldn't go that far. But, I mean, another year or so isn't really out of the question because she's currently doing her thing on the independent scene. She's doing her thing, in the Women's of Wrestling show. I don't know if she could still do that if she was with AEW. Probably. But definitely not WWE, I would assume. So, it's really not as, predictable that she's going to leave Impact. It's not really, a set-in-stone decision that she's leaving or Impact for WWE or AEW in the summer. We'll say it's going to be a very interesting time for Tessa Blanchard to see where she ends up. And their last question here, do you think that Daniel Bryan versus Johnny Gargano should occur at Survivor Series? That's a great question. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I don't think they need the match. They're going to have enough matches as it is, so probably not. I would probably just save that for when Gargano inevitably gets called up. But if they want to do it at Survivor Series, I would be all for it. I just don't want to see Daniel Bryan. He shouldn't be losing to everybody. For him to lose to Adam Cole was great. For him to lose cleanly, I mean, I guess Johnny could lose and wouldn't lose anything to Fee because the guy's, that's kind of his gimmick anyway. They're very similar in that respect. I don't really see that as being likely because I don't think Gargano is going to be involved in this NXT invasion at all because currently he's quote-unquote hurt after the attack from Finn Balor 2 weeks ago. So he wasn't on SmackDown, he wasn't on Raw, and maybe he will show up in the next couple of weeks, but I feel like he's more focused on Finn Balor, and I feel like him and Finn will be kind of exempt from this NXT invasion right now. They'll involve Undisputed Era and even Ciampa and Riddle and Lee and everyone else, even the women, but I feel like they'll keep Balor and Gargano out of it because they're doing their own separate story right now. So I don't think we'll get the match, but at some point, if and when that match does happen, whether it be at Survivor Series or at some other point down the road, you can absolutely expect for that bout to be a banger. That has Show written all over it. That sounds amazing. At noob_n_co1991, their first question was, do you think Natalya will turn heel on Charlotte Flair? God, I hope not. We have seen the Charlotte-Natalya feud so many times now. Between NXT, they did it on Raw years ago, and Charlotte first became Divas Champion, then the Raw Women's Champion back in 2016. So they did it in 2014, they did it in 2016, they did it again in 2017 for several months in the final few months of 2017 over the SmackDown Women's Championship. And their matches have always been good, but I have zero desire to see that be the next feud for Charlotte on Raw. I like the idea of them as a tag team. I don't really mind that Charlotte is new to the tag team scene. Same thing with Natalya. So I don't mind it. But for it to split off into an eventual feud with Natalya going heel or Charlotte going heel, I could not possibly give two fucks about either one of them turning heel again so soon. So no thanks. Do you think Ronda Rousey and the rest of the MMA 4 Horsewomen will interfere in the women's triple threat match at Survivor Series? Ronda, no. I feel like that would be a weird spot for her to come back. And I guess she could. Help Shayna win and then set up her and Shayna and the other 4 horsewomen, Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke. I was going to say versus the 4 horsewomen of WWE, but it would make no sense. Because Becky just got done feuding with Bayley. And Charlotte just got done feuding with Bayley. Becky just got done feuding with Sasha. So it wouldn't really make any sense to do the 4 horsewomen versus the 4 horsewomen right now. I feel like the only time where it would have made sense would have been over a year ago when Sasha and Bayley were teaming in the summer of last year. And then Charlotte and Becky, before Becky went babyface, or rather before she went heel at SummerSlam and then her and Charlotte started feuding. That would have been the only logical time to do it. Would have been right after WrestleMania, and I'm glad they didn't do it then because it would have been way too soon. So, yeah, I don't think we're getting that. I don't think Ronda Rousey will interfere on Sunday. I think she will be back at some point. Maybe not anytime soon if she's trying to have a baby. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that'll happen. I think it's a very good possibility we could see Shafir and Duke get involved, because in a triple threat match, the last time I checked, there's no disqualifications or countouts. So they could get involved and, help Shayna win the match, but then we could also see interference from Sasha Banks, helping out Bayley, helping out Becky. I don't know, maybe Charlotte. I doubt it. That would make no sense, but maybe a little sense. I mean, they were kind of aligned for a little while a few weeks ago, but they still had bad blood. Don't forget about it. I mean, let's not forget about the fact that they feuded for a fucking year from last summer up until a couple of months ago. So, I wouldn't necessarily do that, but it is very likely we see Shafir and Duke interfere in that match to help Shayna win. But it would be even better if Shayna can win on her own. At Jeremy8911 from Twitter, thoughts on The Fiend winning the Universal Championship and bringing it to SmackDown? Who do you at all see him feuding with on SmackDown? I like the fact that The Fiend is finally champion. I don't want to complain, but the fact that it happened there and not at Hell in a Cell was stupid. It really should have happened 3 weeks earlier at the other fucking pay-per-view, Hell in a Cell. That's when it should have happened. That at Saudi Arabia, not at Crown Jewel. That made no sense. But, hey, better late than never. At least they finally had him win. If he lost again, he would have been solidified as a loser. The same guy that he was for so many years before he rebranded himself, before he repackaged himself as The Fiend, he would have been known as the guy who talks a big fight, who talks a big talk, but can't back it up in the ring. So, I'm glad that he won. I wouldn't have put him on SmackDown. I do like The Fiend on Raw. I feel like it's a weird fit for him on SmackDown. I would have kept Brock on SmackDown and The Fiend on Raw. I would not have switched it, but that's just me. Now that he's on SmackDown, though, and not moving, who do you have him feud with? Roman Reigns, I guess, would make the most sense, and I hate to fucking say that because we've already seen Roman beat Bray so many times. I have zero desire to see that feud again anytime soon, if ever again. I could see them building up Roman, though, to face Wyatt for that championship. I absolutely could at WrestleMania. I would hope not. Aleister Black would be cool, but Aleister Black's on Raw now, so I guess that wouldn't make any sense. From SmackDown, they have Daniel Bryan. I guess they could build him back up and do Bryan versus The Fiend. And he does have history with Wyatt, like Roman does, but their matches were much better than Roman and Wyatt, which wasn't bad either, but I would rather see Bryan be the one to beat The Fiend and not Roman Reigns. But how can anyone beat The Fiend? The guy just fucking, endured 8 curb stomps the other day and still kicked out and a sledgehammer shot to the head, and he still kicked out and he survived. It's who can really beat The Fiend realistically? I would say nobody, but unless you fucking shoot the guy, I feel like nothing can beat Bray Wyatt right now. But anyway, who else from SmackDown would really make even any sense? They have Nakamura. They have... SmackDown has a good show. They have a good roster, but I struggle to think of who else is even on the show. I honestly don't even know. I really don't. I think Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns would make the most sense. I'm going to the roster page right now. Let's see. I probably should have looked at this before, but I forgot you had asked this question. Dolph Ziggler, no. Ali, give me a break. The guy's great, but they got to really build him up for fans to view him as a threat to The Fiend and the Universal Championship. Who else do they even have on SmackDown? Corbin? No. The Miz? No. I like The Miz, but that's not going to happen. They don't really have anybody. Sheamus? Yeah, SmackDown's got a thin roster with Brock being gone, who wasn't even really going to be full-time anyway, and I get that. They have a very thin roster in terms of main event top talent. But anyway, I'm not really sure. I really don't know. Probably Roman and Bray, or, Roman and Bryan, rather. Not Bray. Bray is The Fiend. But other than them, I'm not sure. I really don't. And I don't know how, regardless of who it is, how they're going to have anyone beat The Fiend, based off how he's been booked so far and how he was basically made to look invincible at Crown Jewel and Hell in a Cell, respectively. They have really done everything in their power to make him look immortal and invincible and just unbeatable. So we'll see how that plays out. Jeremy's second question here. Thoughts on Daniel Bryan and Adam Cole having a possible match of the year this past Friday on SmackDown with a little time to prepare? Yeah, they had an awesome match. Adam Cole just talked about it this morning on Corey Graves' podcast, and I didn't listen to the whole thing, but I did hear the clip on WWE's YouTube channel where he said that they landed at 8:15, 8:20, the very end of Brock and Paul Heyman's promo, and then he went on an hour later to face Daniel Bryan for the NXT Championship. That is incredible. That is absolutely incredible. And not even that, I think he was backstage. He showed up in that backstage segment with Daniel Bryan maybe around 8:45, I want to say, 8:30. So he must have just shown up and then been thrown right into that segment. And yeah, they went out there and had an awesome match. Maybe not match of the year. I don't know if I would go that far. I've seen far better matches in NXT and on the main roster. But, recently, maybe not. I can't think of too many matches that were better than that one in the last couple of months. I thought Becky and Sasha had an amazing match at Hell in the Cell. That might be the closest thing, though. But, I don't think it was match of the year. It might have been the best TV match of the year. Probably one of the better TV matches I've seen in a while. But yeah, props to them for going out there on very little time to prepare and killing it in the main event. And that's what happens when you book a show on the fly. I mean, I don't want to say I'm thankful for WWE's flights getting delayed in Saudi Arabia and getting stranded over there, but it really worked out to their benefit because that show was fucking awesome. They gave all the segments time and it all felt organic and the matches were great and NXT went over strong. They were made to look like stars as they should have been. It was just amazing. Everything about that angle was so fucking good. And it was based on a match. It was based on a show that was put together at the literal last minute. Probably while the show was still airing, they were putting that show together. So I thought it was great. They did an awesome job. And Bryan and Cole had a great match. And I'm looking forward to the eventual rematch down the road. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine. Check out his YouTube show, Real Honesty with John Ritland. Great show. Anyway, his question was, what are the chances WWE messes up this NXT invasion by the time Survivor Series is over? Yeah, very good chance. You can always expect, not to sound pessimistic, but you can always expect WWE to take something that works and fuck it up somehow. It wouldn't be the first time, wouldn't be the last time. I don't want to sound, again, pessimistic, but it is realistic to believe that they could take something so good as the NXT invasion and really cool it off in the next couple of weeks. I do not expect NXT to come out on top at Survivor Series, not at all. They are on the same playing field as Raw and SmackDown being on USA Network now, but at the end of the day, they still view NXT as developmental. So I'd be shocked if they went over at Survivor Series. Pleasantly surprised, sure. Shocked even more so, just because I highly doubt that's going to be the case. I was shocked they went over as strongly as they did on SmackDown. I thought that was really well done. But I don't see that being the case again at Survivor Series. But yeah, we'll see. Just, be wary of it. They could fuck this up in the next couple weeks. I hope they don't. I hope they continue to do well by it, and I'm happy they've done well by it so far up to this point. But going forward, though, how much more can they do with this? A lot, but how much more can they do before they fuck it up is the real question. And I don't want to say, it's inevitable. They're going to fuck it up in a week. I'll give it 2 weeks. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be negative. But I am trying to be realistic here. I am happy with what they've done with the invasion so far. But Survivor Series isn't for another 2 or 3 weeks. And there is plenty of time for them to take this, turn it around, and make NXT look like a bunch of losers by the time that it's over, which I really hope is not the case. John's second question. So the card for AEW Full Gear is only 4 matches deep with just a few days left to go. I'm sure they'll add more, possibly during Dynamite, but this isn't this kind of a bad sign? They've had a month of TV to build this, plus they're asking fans to pay $49.99 for this show. So he sent this in before they added, I think, a 5th match between Bea Priestley and Britt Baker. I don't know if it was officially announced, but I'm almost positive that it was. On Dark last night. Again, he sent this in before the show aired on YouTube, which was an hour late, but whatever. They also teased Shawn Spears, I think, versus Joey Janela. That doesn't really do much for me, to be honest with you. I could see that happening on the buy-in, on the pre-show. But other than that, I really have no desire to see Joey Janela versus Shawn Spears. Who gives a fuck? Just because Shawn Spears roughed him up in the back? I don't really give a shit, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think the show will be great. Jericho and Cody should be really good. I'm looking forward to the Bucks and Santana and Ortiz. But the fact that, again, they will add more matches, I'm sure, tonight on Dynamite. But the fact that we still don't know what the World Tag Team, and more specifically, just because, those titles were created a week ago. They were awarded to the first ever champions a week ago, so I kind of get it. But they should have said, hey, the winners of the tournament will face this team at Full Gear. Or just wait until Full Gear to do the finals of the tournament. I feel like that would have made more sense. Anyway, though, more specifically, how do they not have a women's title match set for the show yet? It makes no sense. They really do not give a shit about their women's division. That's not their strong suit at all. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they're asking fans to pay $50 for it. I don't know if I'll still get the chance to watch it for free. Being a Bleacher Report writer, being owned by Turner Sports, I watched All Out for free. Not sure about this one. But if I had to pay for this show, I don't think I would. I really would. I would not pay $50 for a show that had a month worth of build. And I get it just because Dynamite debuted a month ago, but that's no reason to cut them some slack. I feel like they've really been putting all their eggs in one basket with the elite stuff and the inner circle, and it's been well done. But the tag team division, they've been having awesome matches, but they have no tag team matches. I mean, aside from the Bucks and Santana and Ortiz, but that kind of goes along with the inner circle stuff. Set for Full Gear on Sunday. There's nothing. The women's match, definitely no women's matches aside from maybe Britt Baker and Bea Priestley. I honestly do not expect that to be any good. Bea Priestley, from what I've seen, is not great, and Britt Baker might be even worse. So we'll see how good that match is. And I don't want, again, to sound negative, but I don't know. They have 5 matches so far, and that's all they have for a 3-hour show, maybe 4 hours. We're not really sure yet. It's not a good sign. I agree. It's not a good sign, but I do hope they can, as they have in the past. There wasn't a lot of buzz going into All Out, but they still came out of that show with a great fucking show. I thought it was a really good pay-per-view. So a lot like NXT where the build isn't always great, I do hope they can put together a great show nonetheless. But at least with the takeovers, to be fair, the takeovers are free on the network if you pay the $9.99 a month. These shows, there's no excuse for the build to be as abysmal as it has been, just because they are expecting you to pay $50 to watch it. Why the fuck would I pay $50 to watch a show that has minimal build? Yeah, maybe for Cody and Jericho, they've done a good job of building that up, but everything else, not so much. John's third question, with the recent news of Chaos running wild in Ring of Honor, could you see more talents leaving and even Sinclair pulling their funding for it in the near future? I don't know about the Sinclair thing. I wouldn't think so. I'm not sure how much money Ring of Honor makes for Sinclair. I mean, attendance-wise, I have no idea, but ratings definitely not too. But, it's just another thing they own. And, I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know how much more money they're willing to put into Ring of Honor if they're just going to continue to generate bad buzz the way they have been, negative buzz the way they have been for the last couple of weeks, but specifically in the last few days alone with the whole Joey Mercury thing coming out, which was so embarrassing. But, so I really don't know. I don't think Sinclair will ever pull out, or at least not anytime soon. I know there's been rumors for a while of WWE buying them or Impact, or not Impact specifically, but more so Anthem buying Ring of Honor, which would help, but the show has been so dead now for close to a year, it feels like it's dying off. Attendance is shit. Talent is leaving. I could absolutely see more talent leaving. Marty Scurll, I think his contract is up this month. Maybe at the end of the month. He should be gone by that point. If he stays, I would be shocked. I'd be shocked if he didn't go to AEW. And WWE, I'm sure, is knocking on his door as well, but why wouldn't he go to AEW, where his best friends are, especially now that he's not dating Deonna Purrazzo anymore, who is under contract NXT. Why would he go to NXT at this point? It would make no sense. Or even Ring of Honor. So he'll be gone soon. Jeff Cobb's contract might be up soon. Matt Taven, I know, re-signed, but it's not really a game changer. I like the guy, but let's be real here. Who else do they even have? Roosh's contract is coming up. I doubt he leaves. I mean, they just put the top title on him. PCO's contract is up. The guy's 50-something. I doubt he goes anywhere else. I mean, he's a very good character, but I'm sure Ring of Honor will pay him a lot of money to stay. I'm not really sure who else they have, to be honest with you, who could leave. Kenny King there is. Jay Lethal. He should have left a while ago. I mean, he was world champion earlier this year, but I feel like he's done it all in Ring of Honor. And it's time for him to move on to bigger and better things. If he doesn't go to NXT when his next contract expires, I don't think he ever will. It's just as simple as that. So, it's a shame, but Jay Lethal, I think, should leave. I know that would be a big blow to their roster, but it's got to teach them a lesson somehow that they're not running things properly, according to certain sources backstage. John's final question here. He's got 2 more questions, actually. Or no, he's got 1 more question. Thoughts on Scarlett Bordeaux and Shotzi Blackheart signing with NXT? Got to throw in Indy Hartwell as well, who also signed with NXT this past week. It was made official on WWE.com. Now, she's not as notable as Shotzi or Scarlett, but Indy Hartwell, I got to say this right now, is one of the best women's wrestlers out there. And the reason I know that, I've seen her work, but moreover than that, she deserves this more than anybody else. I've been following her now. We've been following each other on Twitter now for 7 years, maybe since 2012, I want to say. A long time. She was a fan just like you and I. Up until she probably obviously still is a fan, but she was solely a fan like you and I up until a few years ago. And then she started to pursue wrestling. I think she's from Australia. Yeah, she's from Melbourne. I knew she was from Australia. I just forgot what part. She's from Melbourne. And she started training to become a wrestler. And she's done amazing work for a lot of different companies, Shimmer and all these other promotions around the world. And NXT signed her at, I think, 22 years old. That's incredible. So it's amazing to me to see someone that I've been following for so long, as just not even as a wrestler, but as a fan up until a couple of years ago. To see her in WWE to me is amazing. So congrats to her. I know, again, she's not as well known as the other ones, but I think she can do real big things if they handle her the right way. She's a big pickup for NXT. As for Shotzi and Scarlett, another two really good signings for NXT. Scarlett, I haven't really seen much of her in ring work. I've heard that she's pretty good. I didn't really see much of that in Impact. She was more of a sex symbol. And honestly, I'm not a big fan of that shit usually. This day and age, I know, again, it's not a bad thing, but that's what I'm trying to say here. For someone's gimmick to entirely be the smoke show stuff, but she does it so well that I don't have a problem with it. Where Katie Forbes, she had a match. I think she's the real-life girlfriend of Rob Van Dam. She had a match against maybe Jordan Grace a couple weeks ago in Impact, and it was fucking terrible. She is so bad. She's terrible. And she was shaking her ass and all this other stuff. I guess Scarlett has done that as well in her matches, but it doesn't come off as forced. She doesn't really rely entirely on that character to get herself over. She seems legitimately talented in all areas. She's good enough in the ring, maybe not great, but she's good. She has a presence about herself, and she can be that sex symbol for somebody else. Not to say that she won't be a player in the NXT women's division, but I feel like her role really is as a manager. For someone like a Killer Kross, who's still, unfortunately, with Impact, not being held hostage, that's a little, over-exaggerating, but they're not releasing him. And they're not doing anything with him, so he's basically there doing nothing. They should, pursue him. NXT should. When his contract expires or he gets released, whenever that may be, maybe in another 5 years. But I think Scarlett and Killer Kross is a pairing that makes sense. I've seen them on certain shows, indie shows. It just makes sense. So, yeah. Scarlett and Killer Kross, I feel like would be a great pairing to have in NXT. But on her own, she's going to be. I think she's going to do very well for herself in NXT as well. Shotzi, I've seen enough of her work in Evolve. I actually saw her in person a couple months ago at Evolve in New York City and Brooklyn with Alexis in late September. And I don't think Alexis knew who she was at that point, but she was impressed with what she saw. And then when I told her that Shotzi got signed a couple weeks ago, she was really happy for her. She was really excited because she saw her at that Evolve show. And it's cool to see people that you're following, even if it's not for a long time, get signed by the promotions that you watch. I feel like that's a really cool feeling. But, I've seen her in Impact before. I've seen her in Evolve. And she's also really, really good. And she has a certain charisma about her that few women have currently. So at a time where NXT's women's division could not be any more stacked, there's a lot of women that, that as great as the division is right now, to the point where we're getting a women's War Games match in a couple weeks, they still have even more women waiting in the wings that aren't even on TV yet. Deonna Purrazzo, Chelsea Green, two very good talents who have yet to debut. Purrazzo's been on NXT TV before, several times over the last year, but not as a regular on the show. And I think when she and Chelsea Green end up as an act, debut on NXT as an act soon enough, that they will also get over because they are very, very good. So we still have Chelsea Green waiting in the wings, Deonna Purrazzo, Toni Storm, who is rumored to be making a full-time move to the NXT women's division in Florida soon enough, and now Shotzi Blackheart, Scarlett Bordeaux, and Indy Hartwell. That's a lot of talent just sitting on the sidelines. That's not even including the talent on TV currently. So NXT's women's division is stronger, I would say, than it's ever been, and it's great to see. But yeah, I'm very happy for both of them, and I'm sure they will be great assets to NXT's women's division and beyond. At Farron's53, his first question was, what do you see happening with Darby Allin and Jimmy Havoc in AEW? Should they go into a long-term feud, team up, form the base for a new hardcore division, etc.? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the hardcore division idea. I mean, I could see why it would make sense. It's innovative, but at the same time, it's really not, because we kind of had something similar in WWE years ago, and, we kind of have that right now with the 24/7 title. Not exactly, but with the whole 24/7 shit, and it's not exactly the hardcore championship, but it's so similar to the point where it's basically what that hardcore division used to be. I don't think AEW needs a hardcore division. I don't think they have enough talent right now to warrant making a hardcore division, but as a tag team, it could work. The only issue I see with that is that they already have a lot of tag teams between the Young Bucks, Santana and Ortiz, the Lucha Bros, SCU, that I feel like they would get lost in the shuffle. They would basically become the designated jobbers for that division. A lot like the Jurassic Express find themselves right now. Unfortunately, and they are really good, but I don't think Luchasaurus' injury helps at all, obviously. But at the same time, a tag team could work. It's better than continuing the feud for no reason. I can only see so many Darby Allin versus Jimmy Havoc matches, and they work well together. They're both very good talents. I'm a big Darby Allin fan, but I can only see Allin versus Havoc so many times before it starts to get old. And I would probably argue it already has. But yeah, maybe not a long-term feud. We've already kind of seen that. We've already seen Darby Allin beat Jimmy Havoc one-on-one. Teaming up would be probably their best bet at success. The only issue, again, I see with that, and they have very similar characters, so it works. The only issue I see with that is that there's so many tag teams that are better than them and that are higher up on the totem pole, the tag team totem pole right now in AEW. I'm just not sure how far they would go before getting lost in the shuffle. His second question: since it appears the WWE Universal Championships will be on the line at Survivor Series, and the event is including NXT, should we get an NXT Championship match as well? Not a bad idea. I'm not sure who you would have go for the NXT Championship. So, in that case, I think it's a cool idea to have the NXT Championship defended on a main roster show. I mean, we've had it on Raw and SmackDown, but never a pay-per-view, I don't think, so far. So, what they could do, they already have Brock and Rey Mysterio for the WWE Championship. So they're not doing the WWE Champion versus the Universal Champion, nor should they. I don't want to see Brock and Bray. I feel like that would be a mistake. I guess they could do Rollins and Wyatt again, as much as I don't want to see that, just because their first two matches sucked, and I have no desire to see it again. But if you don't do that, then what do you do with The Fiend? Does he sit this one out? Like, it makes no sense for SmackDown's top champion to not be on the show in some form or fashion. So I think Rollins and Wyatt is probably the most likely scenario. And then what do you do with the NXT Championship? Well, I guess you could do Cole and Ciampa for the NXT title. I would save that for either an episode of NXT TV or for the next TakeOver or for whatever. I wouldn't do it at Survivor Series. I don't think the crowd would care as much. I don't think they would get the time they deserve. I don't think it would be treated as big of a deal as it would be in NXT. Well, then, in that case, you might say, why not do someone else that doesn't mean as much, and they can go out there and have a great match? Even then, though, I feel like Adam Cole has been so involved in this brand supremacy thing that he should probably captain his own team against Team Raw and or Team SmackDown. Unless they do Team SmackDown and Raw as one, I don't know. But I would rather see that, to be honest with you. Adam Cole and, Fish and O'Reilly are already in their other matches, and maybe they could do Strong versus Styles versus Nakamura, which would be fucking amazing. But, yeah, they could do Adam Cole, Ciampa, Matt Riddle, Keith Lee, and then maybe someone else versus a Raw team, maybe consisting of Daniel Bryan, or, obviously Bryan would be on Team SmackDown. Team Raw could consist of maybe Seth Rollins if he doesn't go back for the Universal Championship. And if he does, I'm not sure who else would be in that spot. But you know what I mean. Like, you can put other people in that match to make it, make sense. But yeah, that's probably what I see happening. Not so much an NXT Championship match, which would be fun, and it would be cool to see it defended on a main roster pay-per-view. At the same time, though, I'd rather not see a big match like Cole and Ciampa wasted on a show like that, where Vince probably wouldn't get it. The crowd wouldn't give it the respect it deserves because they're there to see the main roster guys and not so much the NXT stars. I know it's in Chicago, but still, I feel like it would be treated as any ordinary main roster match and not the great match that we know they can have. So I'd rather not see that match, and I'd probably be more likely into seeing Cole captain his own team of NXT superstars against teams from Raw and SmackDown. At RJ_Marceau, Mr. Marceau's question was, Did the women's match on AEW Dark showcase how limited their women's division is? Do you think the push of Britt Baker is strange since she didn't win the championship? She's featured weekly, either wrestling, vignette, or commentary. Rio, on the other hand, has gotten 0 mic time. Yeah, that makes no sense to me. I like the fact that Rio is the first ever champion. Much better than Nyla Rose, who just sucks. Rio is really good. We have not heard from her once on the mic. As far as I know, unless they posted something on YouTube, and even then, they got to do something on their shows showcasing her skills on the mic. And as I've said before, in many, many other different places, if she can't speak, understandable English, or whatever the word might be, if you can't understand her English, speaking, whatever her English, then just have her do a sit-down interview, either have a translator or put up captions. That's it. I'm not saying you have to have her go out there and cut an in-ring promo. I'm not saying that at all. But they have to have this woman speak, or at least focus on her, or tell us about this woman. Oh, we know she's fucking best friends with Kenny Omega. That's great. But other than that, why should I care about Rio? Britt Baker is not that good in the ring. She's decent enough. She hasn't blown me away yet in the ring, though. They need to do something to focus their women's division more. They absolutely have a limited women's division. That match on Tuesday sucked. That tag team match from Tuesday was not good. Sadie Gibbs, from what I've seen, is very talented. Allie's very good. Her character's almost non-existent. Same thing with Sadie. Big Swole isn't signed. Martinez isn't signed. They should be. But yeah, they really do not have a great women's division. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. People can defend AEW all day long. And I love AEW, but their women's division is terrible. Not even in comparison to NXT's. In comparison to really any others, except for Ring of Honors, which is the drizzling shits right now. They probably have a better women's division than Ring of Honor. That's not saying much, though. Not saying much at all. So again, Britt Baker, like you said, she's on the show every fucking week. And again, I like Britt Baker. I really like Britt Baker. I think she comes across well in the vignettes and the promos and commentary and whatnot. Not so much in the ring, but they need to focus more on the other women. It made no sense to me that they have this random-ass fatal four-way last week on AEW Dark with the women, and then a tag team match this week without focusing on any of them. Instead, they put together like a 5-minute video package for Britt Baker versus Bea Priestley at the next pay-per-view on Saturday, Full Gear. Why aren't the other women getting similar treatment? I mean, I know they may roll out more women as as we go along here, but it makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense for them to focus on only one woman and no one else. Even Rio's getting overshadowed by Britt Baker, and she's their champion. So again, I've complained enough about AEW's women's division in the past that this is nothing new, but it still bothers me week after week that, they go out there, they have some good matches, some not so good matches, but the only women who seem to be focused on and featured consistently from a character standpoint, not even Rio to a certain extent, and then Britt Baker, and that's it. So they really got to work on that shit. At Scarlet1 from Twitter, we'll close out with their questions here. First one being, best and worst of the Wednesday Night Wars, number 5. There really was no worst. I thought both Dynamite and NXT this week were great shows. NXT specifically honestly, I didn't think anything wrong with it. I mean, maybe it's just because I'm an NXT diehard, but I really did not see anything wrong with that show. Candice LeRae and Io Shirai, great opening match. Kabuki Warriors versus Dakota Kai and Tegan Nox for the WWE Women's Tag Team titles. Very, very good match. Undisputed Era versus Matt Riddle and Keith Lee in the main event. Great match. War Games announcements. Very cool to see. Over on Dynamite, we had Adam Page versus Sammy Guevara. Great opening match. The contract signing I liked. Moxley's promo was good. The only things I will say I didn't like as much, the Elites match was good. I just don't really see what purpose it served. The Bucks did further their feud with Santana and Ortiz afterward, when Santana and Ortiz came from the crowd and they started brawling with the Bucks. I like that. Other than that, though, the match just seemed completely random and really just an excuse for the Bucks and Kenny Omega to dress up for Halloween. Other than that, when they faced Hybrid 2 and Sabian, it was really just a glorified spot fest and really nothing notable at all. The main event was good, as I said earlier, Lucha Bros and SCU for the World Tag Team titles. But it was kind of underwhelming, and the finish I thought was an even bigger waste. Not a waste, but more of a miss, just because it could have meant so much more. And the finish felt flat to me, like I said earlier. I thought it really came across as underwhelming, And I would not have gone as SCU as I would not have gone with SCU as the first ever World Tag Team Champions for AEW. But other than that, I thought it was a great show. Scarlett's second question here. Any thoughts on the controversy regarding WWE talent getting left behind in Saudi Arabia and how it may or may not have to do with a payment issue between Vince McMahon and the Crown Prince? Yes, I heard all about it. I have no idea what to believe. I mean, there's been a lot of, legit sources saying that there really is more to this than what meets the eye, than what WWE is saying. They put out a statement on Monday or the other day saying there's no truth to the rumors. It really was a mechanical issue. AJ Styles, who is one of their top performers, one of the more respected people backstage, has come out and said, "Hey, I spoke to the pilot, and it absolutely was a mechanical issue." And they I guess reinforced that to the talent on Monday, saying, "Listen, that's what it was. Don't believe the rumors." There is some fishy stuff going on here with the pay-per-view feed being cut out and stuff like that. And I'm not really sure who fed information to the former Spanish commentator who came out with that story the other day. I don't honestly have no idea what to believe. It would make some sense, but at the same time, though, I don't know. I mean, if that plane didn't work and it was a mechanical issue, then they couldn't bring in another plane. Like, other wrestlers got their own charter flights out of there soon after. I don't know. There's something weird about the situation because I feel like they could have just, changed the plane, just get a different plane. Like, that's happened to me before, where I've been on planes that didn't take off because there was a mechanical issue, and then they would just change the plane. Yeah, it would be like a 4 or 5 or 6 hour delay, but at least they would get you a new plane. They wouldn't keep you there for 2 days. They kept them there from Thursday through Saturday morning. So, I don't really know what to believe when it comes to that story. I would like to think it really was just a mechanical issue, but there's a lot of rumors going around that it was a lot more than that. And like you said, it seems like it's kind of creating a rift in the locker room for those who believe that there's more to this, and more, other superstars who say that's really just what it was. And that Vince is, he's either abandoning us, or why would he do that, blah, blah, blah. Who the hell knows what really went on? I don't work there, so I don't know. But it was really a sketchy situation, more than any other situation they found themselves in recently with stuff like this. And then they would go ahead on Monday and announce an all-new partnership with Saudi Arabia that ran for the exact same amount of time that the original deal was supposed to run for. But the same amount of shows, too. Maybe the original deal was for 1 show a year. I could have sworn it was always 2 shows a year, but the new deal says that they're doing 2 shows a year, which is exactly what they've been doing since last year. So I'm not really sure what changes with that. I feel like they just put out that statement to save face after all the rumors that came out over the weekend. But it was a fucking mess, and hopefully it is settled soon. I mean, the further along we go on from it, I feel like the more it will be forgotten about. But it was a real odd situation, and if that really is what happened and they're just lying to the talent, that's a terrible look for WWE. And the fact that their stock plummeted on Monday was far from a surprise. Coming off all the bad news that WWE received, in the words of Bad News Barrett over the weekend. So hopefully that's really just what it was, and there's nothing more to it. But it would not surprise me if there was more to this and there was some sort of a dispute between Vince and the Crown Prince. If there was, I mean, just because they signed a new deal or put out a new deal doesn't mean that nothing happened, because they could have argued and then settled it and then moved on. So, I don't know. I feel like these rumors have to start somewhere. There has to be some credibility to some of this shit that's going on. It can't just be a mechanical issue, because otherwise, why wouldn't they get another plane? That doesn't really make much sense to me. But a lot of the talent, I will say this, regardless of what happened, it's a bad look for the talent. Not their fault, but a lot of these people, why would they want to go back? Why would they want to go back after this fucking nightmare that they had to endure at the end of this trip? So I could see a lot of talent saying, much like Kevin Owens and all these other people, Daniel, Bryan, who say they don't want to go, I could see other talent saying, hey, I don't feel comfortable after what happened last time. I'm not going. So the next show, whenever it might be next year, is going to be very, very interesting. Their next question: thoughts on the AEW and Rick and Morty cross promotion and Kenny Omega's Undertale entrance, including the passive-aggressive shots against New Japan Pro Wrestling. I thought the Rick and Morty crossover was great. I put out a whole clip about it here on the channel on Friday from Wrestle Rant Radio on Thursday, the Halloween episode. I'm a big Rick and Morty fan. I thoroughly enjoy the show, and I thought it was real cool to see the cross promotion there. People who don't watch the show probably gave zero shits about it, but I thought it was funny as fuck, especially since Orange Cassidy and Best Friends are a guilty pleasure act of mine. I think they're great together, so I really enjoyed that. Didn't get the Undertale entrance thing. I'm not a big video game guy, so I really wasn't sure what that was about. If it was an anime thing, a video game thing. I think it was a video game thing. And I'm not sure what shots were taken at New Japan, except for the fact that Nick Jackson went on Twitter the other day when someone asked him about a potential working relationship with New Japan at some point between AEW and New Japan. He said, absolutely not. Like we've already said multiple times, people still think it's going to happen. Nothing will come of our relationship with New Japan, so just basically get over it. That to me spoke volumes because that was their home for so long, so I'm not sure what the falling out was or what happened there. But it doesn't look like we're going to see New Japan and AEW working together anytime soon. So I would love to know the story behind that. I wasn't really focused on the shots made against New Japan on the show itself last week, but I was following the comments that Nick Jackson made on Twitter on Sunday, and I thought that was very telling as far as the relationship currently between AEW and New Japan. The last question here from Scarlet One. Thoughts on Seth Rollins criticizing Dave Meltzer and after Meltzer claimed Rollins attempted to give the locker room a speech regarding the Saudi Arabia controversy. It's just misinformation. That's journalism. That's what it is. But you got to either trust your sources because that's a big thing to lie about. Dave Meltzer, I'm sure it wasn't his intent to go out there and spread lies about Seth Rollins. He's just reporting what he was told from a source inside the company. Whoever that source was is clearly a fucking liar because he either made a speech or he didn't. The source told him that he did. So I'm not sure why would Dave Meltzer purposely lie about something like that? If he went out and apologized anyway, if he lied about it, got caught in a lie, and tried to ignore it, then yeah, I would say he was probably bullshitting. But he issued an apology soon after Seth Rollins came out and said, yeah, dude, you're bullshitting. I didn't even say a word during the meeting, so I'm not sure what you're talking about. So I'm sure Meltzer, at least in my opinion, did not purposely go out there and lie about the situation. But that just goes to show that his sources, whoever they may be, can't be trusted. It's far from the first time something like that has happened. It happens in everyday journalism. You have your sources, you can trust some, you can't trust others. Now he knows who not to trust. Whoever he was talking to was clearly trying to sabotage Seth Rollins because it's not like, I mixed up Seth with AJ Styles. Like, it doesn't exactly work that way. This isn't something where the facts may have been slightly off. Either he didn't talk or he did, and clearly he didn't. So I thought that was very strange. But yeah, I'm glad that Rollins spoke out about it. He could have very well just kept his mouth shut, kept quiet, and let the rumors run rampant. And I feel like that would have built more, built up the credibility of the reports indicating that he did speak and that it was an awkward speech, blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure in a lot of these circumstances why a lot of these people just don't come out and say, yeah, it was bullshit. Rollins even spoke to Fightful, which that was really refreshing, and he clarified the situation saying, I did not speak. AJ did. Carl Anderson spoke up. Rusev said something, but that was about it. I never said a single thing. And I feel like more wrestlers should be able to do that without being, without fearing for their jobs, that they might get fired or suspended for speaking out. Rollins wasn't speaking out against WWE, but he was clarifying the reports that were out there. A lot like Lio Rush, who was in hot water with WWE for a while after that. But he clarified the reports too. After, they indicated that he wasn't on the road and the added heat and all this other shit. Lio Rush came out in an interview on Fightful and said, yeah, I'm not a fan of the way that they don't pay for our travel and stuff like that. I thought it was really, really interesting. So I really wish more wrestlers would do that. But yeah, I'm glad Rollins spoke out about it and corrected Dave Meltzer on his inaccurate information, because we should get more of that for information that isn't accurate instead of not saying something and letting fans believe, oh yeah, he did this or he did that and what a loser, blah, 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 what an asshole. They should come out and say, no, it's not true. And sometimes, of course, the wrestler could be lying as well to save face. But in this case, I absolutely believe Seth Rollins, and there are other sources there that other journalists have in WWE to back this shit up, who have also said, yeah, Rollins did not speak. So I'm glad that situation was cleared up on Tuesday. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 310 of #AskGSM here today. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning into the show. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section of this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So until then, guys, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy NXT and AEW Dynamite tonight. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.